Hello and welcome. My name is Roger Philipp of Roger CPA Review, and today I want to talk about the 2018 CPA exam updates. There are several changes in content, but also in the user experience. And as far as the user experience, certain updates, first of all, their goal is to improve the exam taking experience for you, the CPA candidate. First of all, it's expected to be implemented in Q2 of 2018, which would be about April 1st. They're going to have updated software design, technological enhancements, also larger monitors. And that's nice because when you go to the Prometrics testing centers where you take the CPA exam, they currently have smaller monitors, but they're going to increase them to HD 23-inch screens. The benefit of that is you can view multiple elements of the exam on that one screen. So for example, if you're doing a task-based simulation or a DRS document review simulation, it gives you the opportunity to kind of split the screen and have more surface area upon which to work out the problems. Now what they're doing is they're actually using the real Microsoft Excel. It replaces the generic spreadsheet tool that's currently being used on the exam. Also, most of you already have experience working with Excel through your universities or also through your actual work, so that will definitely prove useful in working with the Excel spreadsheets. They said they will not be testing the Excel abilities, so you're not necessarily setting up formulas and so on, but you're acting more as a tool to use on the exam to keeping track of information as you're doing a document review simulation. As far as the content updates for the 2018 exam, let's look at them by parts. First of all, starting out with the auditing exam. With the audit exam, there's a couple of changes. One deals with the auditor's consideration of an entity's ability to continue as a going concern. Now, we've always had this going concern. You're concerned about whether or not they're going to be around next year. So for example, Blockbuster, right? Where are they today? Bye, gone. And the key is that we want to make sure that not only us as an auditor are we required to look at it and make sure we adjust the audit report if there's a problem, but the company now also needs to analyze and document the work that they've done to make sure that they have communicated to you the fact and given you confidence that they are continuing as a going concern as opposed to a going concern doubt. Also, auditor involvement with exempt offering documents. That says, let's say you're exempt under the 1933 Federal Security Regulations Act, it'll basically give us guidance. So those are some of the basic changes for the audit exam. For BEC, no real BEC content updates. Basically, the new vocabulary that the AICPA has announced is new for the exam purposes only. It's been used in the IT world for many years. But what you're going to do is you're going to see a shift on the emphasis from what computers do to how CPAs use those computers within the information technology IT topics. Now, the blueprint updates, there are no real changes to the representative tasks, but they're adding a lot of vocabulary. So they've added more recent current terminology. So artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, automation, big data, right? Because everything's about data. Marsha. Data analytics, data visualization, blockchain, cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin didn't exist many years ago. Now it is a form of currency that we're currently using, cloud operations, data storage, cybersecurity, things like that. So you'll see that we've added a glossary in our materials as well to emphasize some of those key terms that are already included in the IT section of the BEC exam. Also, the anticipated changes for the COSO ERM Enterprise Risk Management Framework will not be tested in Q1 of 18, most likely Q2 of 2018, and that would be for ERM, Enterprise Risk Management. As far as FAR changes, FAR will by far have the most significant changes. With the blueprints, there's changes to the non-governmental and nonprofit organizations, for example, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. First of all, business combinations, so they're clarifying the definition of what a business is, and that'll help to recognize fewer intangible assets in that business combination. For income taxes, they're replacing the term public entity with public business entity. There's also going to be some additional disclosures for income taxes, deferred taxes. Statement of cash flows, there's a new area called restricted cash, so that'll help to disclose not only cash, but what part of that is considered restricted cash. Compensation, retirement benefits, and also compensation stock options, stock compensation plans. So they're looking at your service cost and other net benefit costs, for example, for pensions. Also the scope of modification for simplification initiative, which deals with with a variety of areas for stock compensation. The big change is revenue recognition, and that's a big change in how and when revenue is recognized when we're dealing with contracts with customers, which I'll expand on in a moment. Financial instruments overall deals with recognition and measurement of financial assets, so it's a pretty broad area. Nonprofit organizations, the presentation of financial statements and nonprofit used to have 3 categories: unrestricted, temporarily restricted, permanently restricted. Now we have 2 categories: net assets without donor restrictions and net assets with donor restrictions. Leases, everyone's talking about leases. That doesn't hit till 2019. So in 2019, that's when we'll go through the different types of leases, the criteria, lessor, lessee, and so on. But we have another year to worry about that. Again, the most prominent, the biggest, most significant change for FAR is the revenue recognition, which says on this next slide, we're looking at revenue recognition. These are contracts with customers. So these are the biggest changes. Should hit the exam, could hit as early as Q1, January 2018. Again, I just finished filming all of this and updating materials and updating homework questions as well, because we used to say, is it earned? Is it realizable? Now what we're doing is a 5-step process in order to recognize revenue on contracts with customers. So for example, step 1, identifying the contracts with customers. Is the contract legally binding? We'll have these 5 criteria we have to look at. Identifying all of the separate performance obligations within the contract. So in other words, is there what we call a distinct performance obligation? So in the olden days, we didn't look at this, but now we say, okay, the obligation is to buy this thing like a washing machine, and then another obligation is to service this thing. So the question is, when should we recognize that revenue? Once we figure out how much revenue there is, we may be recognizing it when the performance obligation is satisfied, or while or as it is being satisfied. So that second criteria is identify them. Third one is determine the total consideration for the contract. So how much money, how much consideration are we paying? Also, how do we value these performance obligations? Do they have a standalone price or an observable price? So we'll have to go through the definitions of that. Then we're going to take that amount and allocate it among the separate performance obligations. So now we're going to say, here's how much we're getting for this contract with the customer. Let's allocate it between the washing machine and the service obligation or the warranty, for example, that's going to be recognized over time. Then finally, we have to recognize the revenue either when the performance obligation is satisfied, so you deliver the washing machine, the product, or while or as it is being satisfied over time, like the service contract. So these are things that in the olden rules we didn't deal with. Now we do, because we're trying to get more in conformity with IFRS, the International Auditing Standards, International Accounting Standards, AIS, IAS, also the IFRS, International Financial Reporting Standards. So it kind of brings US GAAP into closer alignment with the international rules. So it eliminates a lot of the industry-specific factors, because there were all these different industries. So it tries to minimize that, but it also adds a lot of additional disclosures, again, as we will go through in the actual course. For regulation changes, not a lot of changes. Some terminology, Treasury regulations was added, and regulations was omitted, so now they call them Treasury regulations, for example. But as we all know, there's all this new talk about new tax reform and so on. There's no content updates yet for reg as of this filming, but stay tuned for any updates and as they're made, because again, Congress, the President, they're going back and forth. They're trying to figure out what they want to do. Once they approve it, it's not going to hit this exam for at least 6 months. So there's a 6-month lag. But again, we will have those once they're passed and approved in our updates. We will also update the video lectures as well, and also update all of your IPQ interactive practice question homework as well. Once that hits, assuming they can all agree on the new tax reform laws. Now, what do you do about the changes? First of all, don't wait. In other words, there's still time to pass the exam. There's still time to pass, even if you haven't started yet, that one part for 2017 before the changes hit for 18. I would suggest of those 4 areas, the biggest change is going to be in FAR. So if you can sit for FAR this year, that might be nice to do, because then you don't have to learn all those revenue recognition updates. But it's going to be important for you to know once you get out in the real world world as well, so it's nice to learn it here with us. But if you want to avoid it for the exam's sake, and you've learned the old rules, it's earned and realizable, that's great, then you can stick with that. So that's something to consider as far as if you only have time to study for one part in 2017, which part would I want to study for? Also, stay up to date on all the changes by subscribing to our blog and our newsletter as well. Because remember, no matter what the changes are, remember that you have a partner in all of us here at Roger CPA Review. Because our team is dedicated to ensuring that you're set up for success when you're facing any exam changes, and we'll continue to provide you with any and all CPA exam related news and updates. So again, sign up for the blog, sign up for the newsletter, check out our website periodically, and you too will stay informed about the 2018 CPA exam changes and updates. Again, thank you for your time and study hard.